I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Jean Peters. She's a pioneer in the energy industry, specifically building a market research firm, which she sold after 23 years. She'll talk about that journey. She, at one point, thought she was going to sell to her employees and ended up selling to a competitor. She'll talk a little bit about her experience using a business broker and some advice around that. And then we'll hear from her as the other side, so to speak, after selling the business. She did stay on for a 2-year contract, which is almost up. And she shares a bit of her experience on the other side of the sale as well and what that felt like. So hope you enjoy the interview.
I grew up mostly in the West. My father was a general contractor, and my mother went back to college while I was in high school and college. And at the end of all that, she ended up being a therapist, therefore having her own business for much of that time, though she also worked for extension services for a while, helping run extension services in Southern California also. So when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up studying psychology, and I got interested in research. And how do you find a job for research? And I ended up getting a job with a really small research firm in Southern California, in Los Angeles area. And then I worked for the school districts for a while, and then I moved to Oregon. And when I moved to Oregon, that was starting all over again. Whatever contacts I had, I didn't have. But I got really interested. This is 1977. And in that time period, between 73 and 77, I'd gotten very interested in energy. In 1973, we had the oil embargo, the oil crisis, first one, the gas crisis, and long lines and all this. So energy was a very hot topic at that time. And I had done some work at one of the consulting firms, sort of trying to understand energy in the building trades. And then I came to Oregon, and I didn't do much for a while. I got some jobs, but I was always looking for research jobs because that's what I had done. And I realized that without an advanced degree, I really couldn't get a job in research. So I decided to go back to graduate school. It was a very, very economically challenging time at that time. In 1980, there were lots of unemployment. And I went back to college. I went to the university here in Oregon and start my PhD. And within 6 months, I got a job in research working for a consulting firm. This consulting firm was doing a lot of work on energy, which is what I wanted to do. So it was perfect. And as I proceeded over the next 10 years, I worked in that consulting firm and I finished my degree. And about a couple of years after that, I changed jobs to another consulting firm. And by 1995, I had a pretty good career as a consultant. I was a principal in this consulting firm of 120 people. It was pretty good. And that consulting firm was all over the country. So I was working all over the country. And some things happened in the utility industry, which those people who live in California will know as the energy crisis of 2001. But that was caused by restructuring. And my firm in 1996 basically bit the dust. The firm that I was working for, I was laid off. But I had 6 proposals sitting on my desk that I knew I could win 3 of, and they weren't interested in them, even though they'd laid me off. And so I started my own company that day, basically, the day after I was laid off in 1996. And I did win those 3 proposals. And I proceeded to be a one-person consulting firm with some of the other people who'd gotten laid off sort of working for me as stringers. And then within 2 years, I moved out of my basement into an office. So 1996, I started my firm, and then we incorporated by 1998, and I was into an office with 3 employees about that time.
So Jane, talk about, the progress of the firm, and maybe for the non-scientists in the room, explain in a little more detail what exactly the firm was doing.
So utility companies like to build power plants, and they have to get permission to build a power plant from the regulators because, we don't want them to just build so many power plants that we have more power than we need. We don't want to have competing power companies sending lines down the street so that you have to, I'm going to go on that one. So, we could have hundreds of lines down the street if we didn't regulate the utility industry. So in the process, other people have said, hey, there's other things you can do besides build a power plant. And what happened is the regulators decided we want to have people build conservation first because it's a lot less expensive than building a power plant. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that it's done what we might call prudently. So we don't spend too much money, waste it, give it to people who, don't really put insulation in their houses. So the research that I do is all about testing out whether or not those rules are being followed. And we talk to people about, so did you actually get the insulation in your house? Did you actually buy that electric car? And those types of things. Do you actually have those solar panels on your roof? Those types of questions. And then what do you think about them? Why do you do it? Would you like to do something else? So I'm a psychologist. I'm interested in how do we get people to do this voluntarily without those regulations. I did start my career a little later than some people. I started when I started my business, I was 45 already. Many people start their entrepreneurial work in their mid-30s. But I was in my mid-40s, and I knew that at some point, if the business was successful, I would have to decide what I was going to do. So about the time we were 33 people, so I'm in my very early 60s, I started working with a organizational development consultant to help me train my staff to be better leaders so that they weren't so dependent on me, so that I also did some training with the 10,000 small businesses training, Goldman Sachs at one point. And so, that notion is work on your business, not in your business. So I wanted to have this consultant help me to develop the leadership capabilities of my staff. So my goal had been to, when you look at the options, you can wither away, you can grow and sell, you can sell to your own staff. I didn't really want to wither away, but that's always an option. But I really wanted to have the time to really decide if people could take on the company or not. And I had always built the company on the intention that it was a good place to work, not that I was trying to make a lot of money. Our profit ranged from 0 to 12% different times. The profitability of the company really drives the ability to sell. And but the leadership drives the ability to sell to your own people. The complication for me came in actually 2014. I had unexpected health problem, and I had to have open heart surgery, and it was because my heart was fine, but I had a benign tumor in it, and that really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Because I had really been focused on developing my staff and trying to sell it to them. And that took me out of everything for about 6 months. And so I started thinking more seriously about whether I would be able to sell it to my own staff or whether I should sell it to someone else. I was approached by a broker, and I agreed to work with them. I think that's a very difficult decision about who to work with, and I really was unprepared for that. I was unprepared because, like, how do you find the right broker? That was not something that I had any idea. And I don't know whether, in many ways, I don't feel I found the right broker. On the other hand, the sale happened. So I'm satisfied with that. But I did learn that, in fact, the fact that we were able to sell at such a small volume of business and a fairly low profit rate at that time was very unusual. So we were able to sell to a competitor. And so I'm very thankful for that. The company that bought us, Opinion Dynamics, was really happy because they had this, trained staff. They didn't have to train people. And they were able to grow just when they needed to grow with an investment. So it was very a serendipitous situation. I don't know how often that happens, but I think that it probably happens a lot more than we realize. That so you just need to be open to that. And I really we had a couple offers, and one of them was not really seriously worth considering, and the other was very worth considering. So,
Jane, talk about, I just want to spend a couple minutes here on the broker aspect as well, because you had somebody, it sounds like, if I heard you correctly, contacted you. So, it wasn't something that you were seeking out exactly, and that it worked, but you weren't in love with the person or the situation or whatever it was. What is your advice to folks that are at that point in their business where they do know they want to sell? Because I've talked to quite a few entrepreneurs now that have sold their business, some through brokers and some not through brokers. And people have very strong opinions about business brokers. So just any advice you'd give to folks that are potentially deciding to go down that path or not?
Well, I wish I really knew the answer to that question. My own experience, again, it worked out. They took more money than I thought their effort deserved, but they had a platform where they actually hooked me up with a local broker. So I was working with somebody from the Pacific Northwest on a day-to-day basis with the actual final sales stuff. They had a national team that worked on preparing the business for sale, essentially, doing the financials, doing the prospectus, all that. It's that part, that reaching out part to potential buyers that I don't think went very well. And that would be the hardest. I think that in my case, the broker kept advising me that we should be looking outside of my industry, that we should be looking to somebody who was interested to get into my industry, and that they'd seen most sales go that way. And those probably are the sales that tend to give you more money because somebody wants a foot in the door. But I don't know how you find somebody who wants to do this sort of niche, who thinks this niche consulting they should be putting in their quiver, right? On the other hand, I know people in my industry, and they didn't provide a vehicle that would really help us leverage the people in our industry. They give me this list. I checked off the list. I told them where to focus, but what I heard from the people I know, like the people who bought me, yeah, we knew you were for sale because we got this form letter. So you should reach out to the people in your industry outside of what the broker does. You should actually figure out a person to contact in your industry in every firm that you think might be interesting. And I don't know how you do that. I thought they could do that, but they didn't know how to do that. And that was the disappointment, because there are Fortune 500 companies in my industry that might have been a better choice for me to sell to. And I didn't know how to get into them, and I hoped that they would, but they didn't. And then I learned at the end from the guy who was the local broker, is like, you are just so small. I would never take on that size client. A $3 million firm.
What?
Considered too small. So only because of this broker, the large broker, did I get this guy who was really great. And so we did well. The sale was good. I think everybody's happy. I'm happy. But I think that if you are working with a broker, you still have to do much more legwork than and they didn't encourage me to do that. I think they should have said, yes, and here's the letter that you should send them. This is what's going to work. This is what's going to wake them up. Give me the tools to figure out how to do that. That would be a real asset from a broker.
Yeah, some coaching. It sounds like maybe they were trying to earn their keep, justify.
But that would have earned their keep more, in my view, because there's a lot going on, and it takes a lot of time. You're also making a big commitment to not only you have to keep your business running full steam ahead. The goal of increasing your profit. Yeah. So that when somebody comes and looks at it, so you're trying to run your business as fast as possible, as well as possible, and sell it all at the same time. It's a lot of effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jane, my last question for you is the next day, so to speak. You've sold the business, you're sailing off into the sunset, so to speak, figuratively. Just talk about what that felt like the next day or the next week or the next month or, whatever.
Well, it kept going on. It kept going on. I thought we had planned a vacation like the week after, right? And I was still dealing with paperwork. So it doesn't end. In fact, I have a 2-year contract, so I've got another 4 months left with the firm. And that time that I expected to be free was not quite as quick as I thought it would be. However, I did start sleeping much better within about 3 months, and that was very nice. Until COVID hit, but I feel pretty good about the whole thing. Nearly 23 years. Running a business. I was not the only woman-owned business, but I've inspired several other women in our industry to start their own businesses since then, and they are doing very well, which is good. I've been through our industry association. I'm mentoring a couple of people, one of whom has his own business. I'm helping a young man try and figure out how to make his business be more than in his garage, basically. And so it's very rewarding in that sense.
Well, Jane, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed learning about your story and your business, and we really, really appreciate your advice.